Hi everybody, it's Emma here. Today we are going to do a no flow practice which leads us to Badakanasana, the bound angle pose. And specifically we're going to do 7 poses. Originally I started with 5 and then it was just a nightmare trying to choose only 5. Ideally I wanted to do 10, but I'm trying to keep these videos shortish, so it's 7. I know 7 is a stupid number, but anyway, 7 poses that will take us to Badakanasana. You might want to have a strap, a flat yoga block and a couple of yoga bricks for this practice to support you when we get to our final pose, bound angle. Okay, so no wrist work in this class, no knee work, no flow. Just a straightforward hatha class taking us to Badakanasana. We'll start lying down. So grab your strap for this one. We're going to take our reclined hand to big toe pose, Supta Hasta Padangustasana. So come down to a reclined position and loop the strap around the ball of your right foot. And then you can either hold the strap in one hand or both hands. It doesn't matter how high your leg is. We want to just focus on straightening the leg. Okay, so height, not a problem. Just work where. So when you lift your leg up, just get to a point where you think, oh yeah, I can feel a big stretch there. And that's where you want to stop to begin and take deep breaths at that point. You can always pull the strap and pull your leg a little closer in as your breaths deepen. Remember, if you don't have a strap, instead you can hold behind the thigh or behind your shin, or even hold on your big toe. So this is going to help us stretch out the backs of the legs, which need to be open for our practice of bound angle. Let's have a few more deep breaths. And then I either want you to take your strap into the left hand or take your left hand to the outside of the right knee. Take your right arm out to a T shape and then pull your leg over towards the left side. So we'll take a twist. Keeping your right shoulder down at the mat and either looking up or turning your head so you look out towards your right hand. We start to stretch into the outside of the hips and into the glutes. So our glute muscles are the primary rotators of the leg bones in the hip. So it's obviously a very important part of preparing for Badakanasana. Okay, next inhale, bring your leg back up to the top, release the strap, maybe just gently bring the knees in, not a massive squeeze, just a little one. And then loop the strap around the ball of your left foot and straighten your right leg along the mat. Okay, so remember you can hold the strap in one hand or both hands, like one end in each hand. Don't stress about how high the leg is, focus on getting it straight, excuse me, to a point where you can really feel the stretch, and then it's like, okay, now I'm going into deep breaths. So feel the feels, how is that doing in the back of your leg? Just notice and observe, no judgment. We'll take about 5 more breaths here. This pose is one of the best things you can do, in my opinion, to stretch out the back of your legs. Okay, now either take your right hand to the outside of your left hip or grab the strap in your right hand, and bring your leg over to the right side on an exhale. And maybe look over towards your left hand. Keep your left shoulder down to the mat. Feel a stretch through the outside of the hips and into your glute muscles. We don't stay here for quite as long as we did in the first part of the pose. We just realised I'm touching the wall. Okay, next inhale, let's come back to our starting position, leg all the way up in the air, and then release the strap. Bring the right foot off the mat as well. Maybe hold the knees and just take a little massage through the back of the hips. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come up to a seated position. So either roll to your side or take a roll along your spine and come and join me in Dandasana, our seated staff pose. Where's that strap? Okay, so our next pose is Janusasana, the head to knee pose. Take a moment, like I just did, to rock any extra padding out of your sitting bones. And then we'll sit with the legs long and the spine long. Let's do this next bit without holding on if you can. So bring your right heel in as close as you can towards your sitting bones and drop it down to the side. And then help your foot into the top of the left thigh. Sit as tall as you can and inhale to reach up, and from your hips reach forward and reach for your foot, but no worries if you don't connect with the foot. Hands on the mat or hands on the leg, absolutely fine. Then take a lift halfway, and as you exhale, pull the lower tummy in and then fold down more. You can, if you like, use a strap for this pose to help you to focus in on lengthening through the spine. So either catching hold of your foot, somewhere along your leg, or on the mat. Let's have another 3 breaths in our first side of Janusasana. And then release any connections. Inhale, lift halfway. Walk your hands back into the body. Bring your knee up and back to Dandasana. Other side. Without using your hands if possible, left heel in. And externally rotate your leg to drop your left knee down and walk the sole of your foot into your right thigh. Engage through the sole of the right foot. Inhale, reach up, breathe in. And hinge forward, reaching for your foot, your shin, the mat, or use your strap. Inhale, lift and lengthen. And exhale, forward fold. We will stay for 6 deep breaths. Forgot to say it on the other side, you can either look at your toe or you can drop your gaze to your knee. Personally, I like to look at my toes. Another few breaths. And then release any connections. Inhale halfway. Walk the hands into the body. Knee comes up. Back to Dandasana. And exhale completely. Okay. Good. We're going to come up to our feet now. We've got 3 poses to do, standing poses. So poses 3, 4, and 5. You might want to bring a couple of bricks with you for pyramid pose. Okay, so we'll just have those there. We'll use them in a moment. But first of all, we're going to start in Warrior 2. So step or jump your feet nice and wide. So our wide step. And then let's turn the right foot to the short edge of the mat and draw the left toes in. Inhale to bring your arms up to shoulder height. Take a big breath in, and as you breathe out, just bend into your right knee. So we'll keep the shoulders and the hips aligned. Widen your step if you need to. And then take your gaze to the middle finger of your right hand. Let's stay for 5 breaths. Push down into your foundation and engage into your thighs as well. So not just pushing down into your feet. You want to think about engagement through the thighs. So the whole body, or the whole lower body for sure, feels really very much engaged. Okay, on your next inhale, straighten your right leg, feet to parallel, hands to hips. Exhale completely. And then let's get ready to do the other side. So turn the left foot to the back of the mat, turn the right toes in, bring your arms up, excuse me, to shoulder height, breathe in, and then breathe out to bend into your left knee. Once again, widen your step if you need to. Take your gaze when you're ready to the middle finger of your left hand. So once again, firm through your foundation, all the way through the lower body, soften the shoulders. 3 more breaths. 2 and 1. Breathe in to straighten your left leg, feet to parallel, and then exhale completely. From here you can either toe heel or jump your feet together. And our next pose is pyramid, past Votanasana. So as I said, you might want to have some blocks for this one. If you haven't got them, it really doesn't matter because you can keep your hands on your hips or you can drop your hands to the mat. So if you're going to use them, bring the blocks to hip width apart on the mat. And let's stand with our feet hip width apart as well. Let's ground the right foot down and take a shortish step back with your left foot. So not a big step. Then we'll gently pull the right hip back without forcing to get our hips as much as it's possible aligned with the front of the mat. But remember, no forcing. Hands to hips. Lift up your chest, draw your shoulder blades back. Inhale, and then on an exhale, hinge at the right hip, keeping your right hip back and start to come down. Chest leads, shoulders come back in space. Lengthen through your spine, keep your right hip pulling back. Option, hands to blocks, or keep them on the hips, or even take your hands to the mat. Focus on gently drawing back the right hip. You can keep the head coming down towards the right leg if you wish. And as your breath deepens, you might change which side of the block you're on, or even get rid of them altogether. Let's stay another 3. Another 2. And then inhale to a halfway lift from blocks or the mat. And then we'll all bring hands back to the hips. And send the chest forward. A deep inhale to come up. Left foot to the top of the mat. And then we'll change. So exhale completely. Return to mountain pose. And then take your right foot back. So the same sort of distance as you did with the other side. Draw your left hip back in space. Draw the shoulders back, lift up the chest, belly in. Hinge forward from your left hip now. So once again, shoulders back, lead with the chest, come to halfway. Maybe use your blocks, bring your hands down. Lengthen, inhale, belly in, exhale, come down. So keep pulling back through your left hip. Keeping both legs straight, maybe bringing the hands to the mat as your breath develops. Like our head to knee pose, you gaze either at your toes or drop your gaze towards your shin. We'll stay now for another 3 breaths. Hopefully this feels quite intense for you down the back of the leg, but not so much so that it becomes painful. Gently moving the left hip back if it starts to drift forward. Okay, inhale to a halfway lift from the blocks or floor. Exhale, hands back to the hips, and inhale to come all the way to the top. Right foot joins the left, and we'll exhale. And we're back to mountain pose. Good. Okay, our third standing pose, our 5th pose on our journey to Badakanasana is tree pose Vrikshasana. So let's bring our weight onto the right foot. Come onto the left toes. And if you always bring your foot into your shin, which is fine, maybe today's the day to try and bring that foot up into the top of the thigh. So most of us need to use our hand to help us to do that, bringing the foot as high up your leg as you can. Let's start that again, Emma. So bring it knee up, rotate out, and push your thigh into your foot and your foot into your thigh. Seriously, can't believe that. You do that. I will stay here with my foot on my shin. Maybe bring your hands to prayer. And maybe take your arms all the way up and overhead. And let's stay for 5 breaths. Now bring your hands back to the center of the chest if they're in the air. Bring your knee forward and back to mountain pose. Good. Release your arms. Let's bring the weight onto the left foot and rotate the right leg out. And then either bring your foot into the shin or grab your foot, bring it above your knee, push your foot into your thigh and your thigh into your foot. And then either add some hands or add some arms. And we're staying for 5 breaths. Okay, bring your hands back to your heart center. Draw your knee forward. Exhale, mountain pose. Good. Let's come down now onto the mat. Okay, so our 2 seated poses before we practice Badakanasana. We're going to start in wide angle, Upavista Konasana. So from Dandasana, we'll take the legs out wide. So maybe 90 degrees, maybe wider. As always, take a little rock from side to side to make a better connection with your sitting bones and the mat. Point your toes up to the ceiling. If you feel that you're rounding into your back, which is the opposite of what we want in wide angle, because that is also a forward fold, you can pop yourself up onto a flat block or a folded up blanket. In wide angle, you can either work into the pose with your hands shoulder width apart, or you can reach your peace fingers for your big toes, so whichever you prefer. Start by inhaling and lifting up in the chest. And as you exhale, you're tipping forward from the hips and maybe starting to walk the hands away. Keep the toes pointing up and keep the spine long, okay? So we don't want this rounded spine in wide angle. You want to keep it long. So with that in mind, it doesn't matter how far you come down. Just concentrate on the breath. Or how about 4 or 5 more deep breaths? So we're doing this pose to stretch our adductors, the muscles inside the legs. You can probably feel those working quite hard right now. Okay, on your next inhale, lift your chest up and walk your hands back into the body and support under your knees to slide your feet back together, and we return to Dandasana. Good. Okay, 7th pose, Gamakasana. We're just going to do the lower body part of Gamakasana. So let's sit in Dandasana. Let's bring the right heel in and then cross the right knee over the left. And then see if you can bring your heel in towards your left hip. Lean over to the left and bend your left leg as well, if that's available. If not, you can leave it straight, no problem. So we're looking to try and have one knee over the other and heels in. And so we're stretching out into the glute muscles. Okay, so first of all, let's sit tall through the spine. Maybe drop the chin a little. And let's stay here for 5 breaths. And then let's add in a little twist. So hold on to your right knee, sweep your right arm behind you, lengthen, and exhale, rotate in. So taking your gaze either just to the right side or maybe starting to draw your gaze towards your right shoulder. Keep the spine long. And then come back to face forward. Okay, let's release. So release your bottom leg first, and then the top leg, and let's do the other side. So left foot in, cross the left knee over the right, maybe bend the right leg as well, one knee over the other, and bringing the heels in towards opposite hip for this version. And then sit tall through the spine, and then drop your chin and take 5 deep breaths. And then gaze forward. Let's take it into the twist. So hold your left knee with your right hand. Bring your left arm behind you. Sit tall in the spine. And as you breathe out, rotate to the left. Maybe start to look over your left shoulder. And then bring your gaze back to face forward. Release yourself into Dandasana. And we're ready to practice bound angle. Okay, so we've got the body ready. You might want to have your props nearby. So the 2 main props that we might want today are the flat block to sit on. And just as a reminder, we will want to sit on the block if we feel that the back of the legs are tight and the spine is rounding. So we don't want that loaded flexion forward in the pose. You might also want some brick blocks to support under your knees. Okay, so let's sit in Dandasana. That's our foundation to begin practicing bound angle. And then we're going to bring the heels in as close as we can to the sitting bones. We're then going to rotate the legs out and bring the soles of the feet to touch. In bound angle, we want to have as little space between the heels and the sitting bones as possible. So you might even want to hop a little closer towards the heels. So any problems with the knees, your first option, so if there's any pain in the knees, my advice would be to go wider with your pose, taking your heels away from the body. But assuming there's no pain in the knees, but you may want to support them, you can pop a brick under each knee to provide a little extra support. Okay, and remember, you might also be sitting on your block as well. Okay, so legs are externally rotated. We're then going to really focus on lengthening through the spine. So that's a really important part of bound angle. It's a long spine pose. So we're not rounding in this pose. It's a forward bend, an optional forward bend. We'll come to that in a minute. So long spine, crown of the head up. Then we're going to bring the thumbs inside the balls of the feet and then open the feet like a book. So the feet are pointing, the soles of the feet are pointing up towards the ceiling. So keep that long spine, keep the outside edges of feet rolling towards each other, and then your drishti in bound angle is your nose, but you may prefer just to look down at your feet. If that action of opening the feet does not feel good, you could wrap your hands around your feet, or you could hold your ankles. So one of those choices for you. So choose your variation of the pose, whatever you're going to work at today. And with a long spine, your final option is to hinge forward from the hips and come into a forward bend. So over time, bringing yourself so far forward in the pose that maybe your chin lands on the mat in front of you. Alas, I cannot demonstrate that to you today or any time in the past or in the future. Remember, if you're forward folding here, it's happening from the hip creases. It's a hinge movement. It's not a spinal rounding. Stay for another 3, 2, and final round of breath. Release the connection with your feet, support under your knees, and bring your knees together. And give your toes a little wriggle and maybe move your ankles as well. Thanks, folks, for practicing this short sequence with me, getting to our bound angle pose. Next, you may want to come down onto your back. You might like to take a little bridge pose to take the spine in the opposite direction. And then you might want to have a couple of minutes to yourself in either constructive rest or shavasana. Thank you for your practice with me today. Enjoy. Om Shanti. Thank you.